All right. We are live. Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever. We are recording live from Spring IO in Barcelona. How's the show been?
Yeah, it's been amazing so far.
So good. The energy is so good. Everybody here just.
It's the best vibe.
Yeah, it's not just the coffee, which I talked about a minute ago being like rocket fuel. It is just black crude oil, but it is, well, you know. The best vibe. I mean, look, you talk at a lot of shows. I have spoken at one or two shows as well, and this show, it. So every year, this show, really good, and last year I had the best experience that I've ever had. I've been going to Devox Belgium for 15 years, right? Last year was my favorite, right? Last year they moved it earlier in the year, and so the sun was out, it was warm, you could walk around, it wasn't cold and dark all the time, and they had Uber, so I didn't have to like walk several kilometers every way back and forth in the cold, and they took, it used to be that you didn't have like contactless payment, you had to have euros. The taxis didn't take credit cards, and they didn't take Apple Pay, and now so all that is fixed. So it was a really great experience, really great. And there's this energy at Devox, and so that was my favorite Devox. And the reason I loved it so much is because it reminds me of the experience I have here at Spring IO. Every year in Europe, I think of Spring IO as like this wonderful event, and obviously I'm biased. I live in the Spring ecosystem. I think you do as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
You have one of my favorite books called Cloud Native Spring in Action. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Thomas Vitale. I'm a software engineer. I work in a Danish software company called Systematic. I'm really passionate about anything Java, Spring Boot, right? But also cloud native technologies. And so I combined all these passions of mine in writing this book. I really like talking both about cloud native technologies and Java applications and getting a great developer experience. And with Spring Boot, we get such a great developer experience, right? So I want to get still a great developer experience when we introduce Kubernetes and cloud native technology.
Yes. And so I think, didn't we have you on the show before? Did we or no?
No, not this one. No.
Okay, good. I don't know. Or the podcast?
Yeah, we talked about this before, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
No, that's good.
And you were so kind to write the foreword to my book.
Which I really appreciate. That was a lot of fun. That was a really good book. I'm a big fan. And the book's doing okay?
Yeah, it's doing well.
It makes me feel, because sometimes I don't like the things I like. I feel like sometimes people don't like. I feel like I have very strange. I always pick the wrong thing. And then I discovered this Spring thing. And I was like, that's going to be huge. And I was like, if I like it, probably nobody else will like it. But no, I was wrong. It's the one thing I got right. It's the one thing where me and the rest of the world are on the same page. And I liked your book. And I was like, well, it's too like I love messaging, integration, that stuff, and I love workflow. And these are two very niche kinds of engineering, right?
Yeah,
and then the overlap between them, both of them, when you do workflow-based messaging systems, right? The process manager pattern and enterprise innovation, that kind of stuff. There's like 3 people in the world who care, right? And I love that stuff. To me, that the mix of those two things is super interesting. So I did a talk, and like a handful of people came once, like decades ago, right? And so I always think about that. I'm like, I hope this isn't going to be another one of those things where I really liked something and it really spoke to me, but nobody else is going to see it. They're not going to get it. Your book, I have that same, like, there's so much interesting. I can grab onto this and do something with it. It feels like there's a lot of good potential there. And I'm glad to see it's actually succeeding.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we keep getting messages from readers and how it helped them both in, learning more about Spring Boot, but maybe getting the job that they liked. And,
nice.
It always makes me happy because it's been a lot of work, of course. So it makes it all worth it when you receive these messages, right?
I love to hear
being able to help also and give back to the community.
Yeah, and it is a big, wonderful community. So now we're at Spring IO, which is again a community event, amazing event for people. What did you talk about?
Yeah, it's been a very packed Spring IO this year for me. I had a workshop starting the Spring IO conference with supply chain security. That was quite interesting. We talked about different topics like the new SBOM support in Spring Boot 3.3.
Okay,
we talked about bill of materials.
The SBOM support, this is software bill of materials.
Yes.
First of all, what's the story there? Why do I care about this?
So the story is, maybe we can start the story with something that happened not many years ago, the Log4j vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was really serious, of course. Many projects were affected, but the most challenging part was actually answering the question, are we using that version with the vulnerability of Log4j? And the problem underlying that question is sometimes we are missing information about what we're putting into our software.
Right.
So the dependency management solutions that we have, they might lack some information. What transitive dependencies are we bringing in? What versions? And as a software bill of materials, provide the solution for that.
Right.
So that we can keep track of everything that we put into the final artifact that we ship to customers or we put in production, and we can monitor for vulnerabilities, check for the license compliance. So
the license compliance, that's another good point, right? From a regulatory perspective, it's very, very important that you're not linking to code that you have no right to link to, right? And, we developers I'm sure most of us are doing our best to steer away from problematic licenses, but every now and then, it's very easy to link to something and deploy it, and suddenly your whole code base is GPL or something like that.
Yeah, it can happen. And as a developer, I like that I can use something like the CycloneDX plugin for Gradle and Maven. Now Spring Boot provides auto configuration for it.
Right.
So I can get this information, this bill of materials out of the box, and then I can rely on the platform to make all the checks for me.
Right.
Because I want to focus on the business logic, right? So I don't want to spend too much time on additional concerns.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a kind of a win-win situation where we make compliance also good for developers and not adding additional responsibilities or additional limits to what developers do with their daily job.
So this is a good, the Cyclone plugin generates a text file basically that includes all this data, and then Spring Boot both packages it up in the built jar and also exposes it as a actuator endpoint, right? That's really good. I think there's regulation now, right? Doesn't Europe actually have?
Yeah, in the US, I think it's already law if you work with public or government agencies. In Europe, it's probably coming up. There is something in the upcoming EU Cyber Resilience Act, it's called. So there's something about bill of materials, there's something about compliance, and
so it's really important. And,
it is.
And even if you don't work for the government directly, if you sell to the government, you're going to need to care about this stuff soon,
More and more customers will be required to ask vendors to provide software bill of materials. So it's really important to start looking into that. And if you haven't done so yet.
And it's now it is now just add up. You add a Maven plugin and you can get a lot of that value already, right? Super useful. Okay, so but you said you did a whole workshop.
Yes. Yeah, so
6 hours on just that plugin?
8 hours. No, it was software bill of materials were a big part, but we also talked about GraalVM. Because of course everyone is talking about instant startup time and low memory resource usage, and that's amazing. But, what I like from a security perspective is that you get this reduced surface of attack, because GraalVM eliminates all the code that is not reachable from the min method. So all those vulnerabilities affecting code that you're not directly using it, you're not vulnerable to that actually, because it's not there in the final compilation. So
I think I read somewhere that there might be did I imagine? I think it would be, I don't know, actually, I have no idea, but it would be very useful if GraalVM itself exported an SBOM,
Yeah, so there is experimental support. We also looked into that. When using the Oracle GraalVM, you can add a flag and get a software bill of materials generated with CycloneDX again, and also included in the final native executable.
And that only includes the stuff that's actually in the resulting binary?
Yes, I'm not sure about that. But I think it's still experimental, but it would be nice to eliminate some of that information that GraalVM will know that it's not putting inside the final artifact.
Right, exactly. Because I could run it against my class path, but the class path is maybe smaller, by the time it ships into the GA thing. That's really cool. That's the professional pro pay. It's not paid. It's free, but it's not open source, right?
Yeah, it's the Oracle distribution providing that.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I don't know if people know that. Maybe it's changed since DevOps Belgium, but I remember, basically, there's an open source version of GraalVM, and then there's the professional. It's still free. I think you can use it now.
Yeah, it's still free to use.
I think you can use it in every single circumstance in production, right? It's just, don't quote me on that, okay? I don't want to get in trouble, but I think you can. We should ask Alina.
Yeah, we should ask that,
But basically, it's still free. It's just, and you can use it for almost every use case. but it's just not open source. That's all. And there's some really great features there. So I think they want people to use it. Okay, so that's really cool. That is very cool. I mean, that kind of stuff is, it's even harder to peer into a native image today, right? It's
you get this closed world, so
black
it's
box.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that'll get more support. This is a great question here, by the way. Cloud Native Spring second edition, is that coming? Because they want to see the Spring authorization server, and Laura and I would love to see that too.
Yes.
Right? Spring authorization server is pretty amazing.
So
right. Laura is saying yes.
It's an amazing project, of course, and I've been thinking about the second edition. So stay tuned. It might happen. We'll see. Yeah, I got several comments about authorization server, so it's great. In the book, in the first edition, I talk about Keycloak,
which is also
but it's
good.
also great because like Spring Security provides this support for standard OpenID Connect and OAuth 2. So actually, you can just swap out Keycloak for a Spring authorization server, and you don't have to change any code in your Spring Boot application, which is really awesome.
Really good, yeah. And in fact, that stuff can be externalized too.
Yeah,
so it doesn't even have to be in the property files. You could literally just change the environment variable, pointing it to a no OAuth ID IDP, and it will work.
Yeah, and if you're interested in knowing how to build your own authorization server with this new Spring project, check out Spring Security in Action by Lorenzo.
Yeah,
second edition.
Great book. Yeah.
Yes.
Lorenzo Spilka. Did I mispronounce it? Oh, he's giving me a thumbs up. He's saying not bad for somebody who doesn't speak the language. Sorry, man. Yeah, it's a good book. Very good book. Both good books. But you were using Spring. Did you use Auth Server or did you use Keycloak? Oh, yes. I mean, they're both fine, but obviously these days. So here's the thing: the Keycloak stuff, it's got everything, and you have to tear out the stuff you don't want. With the Auth Server, it has everything, but you have to add it in, right? It's about opt out versus opt in, and these days I tend to take a opt in perspective on everything. Like I add to my build instead of taking away. Okay, that's awesome. So what else did you talk? I mean, that's really cool. Like you talked about the Auth Server today. Yesterday.
No. Yesterday I had a talk with Mauricio Salatino. We talked about distributed systems with Spring Boot and Dapper.
Yeah,
it's really great because Dapper is this cloud native runtime that abstracts the infrastructure. So, for example, as a developer, you can interact with a key value store or a messaging system without needing to know what's the underlying technology being used.
Yeah.
And what we've been working on with Mauricio is actually bringing that support for Java developers in a very Spring Boot way.
Mauricio Salatino?
Yes, Mauricio Salatino. And we're still working on it, gathering feedback, so to get all the common APIs that we have in Spring, like for the messaging template or the Spring Data key value, and have abstractions on top of Dapper, so that as a Spring developer still feels very natural because it's like any other integration, but then having this additional capability in our toolbox as Spring developers.
Nice.
Really nice.
Okay. And by the way, I heard from a bird that I think these videos for Spring IO are going to be online pretty quick.
Yeah.
So look for that on
it will be quick.
Spring IO conference, I think is the YouTube channel, youtube.com.
Yes.
Spring IO conference, is it? Something like that.
There's a YouTube channel.
Yeah. So check that out. Like it's, as we record this, it's the 31st of May, 2024. So, mid-June, I would start looking for those videos at the latest. But of course he might not do it at all. That's okay. He did us all a favor. If he releases just one video, it's free. Like, that's a win.
Yeah, and then I finished today with a presentation including Spring AI, which is kind of the hot topic.
It is so good
in this edition. Yes.
Yeah, that place, that technology is. I'm so. My friend Deshaun, he says jazzed, and I don't usually use that word, but I am excited about this. Excited about Spring AI. This is. What about you?
Yeah, it's been really fun. Like I've been following closely Spring AI in the past few months, also contributing to the project and building applications on top of it. But what I shared today at the presentation was an original idea I had. Like I compose music, so I wanted to build an application to help me manage my ideas and thoughts around different composition, chord progressions, musical instruments, and of course AI maybe can help with some of those features. So today I showed different like how to do classification and structured data export and semantic search, and then in the end I let the audience choose a movie scene, and then I composed and played the soundtrack live. It was really, really fun.
Yeah. Which now there's some people some There are some people that might wonder about this in the room. Which cloud? Which hosted? Do you use a hosted AI LLM?
So I actually had examples using OpenAI, Mistral AI, and Olama.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's great because I don't have to change the code, just
No.
switching a dependency, and it just works. Also
Sometimes.
with Olama with test containers.
Yes.
That was really great. Also using test containers cloud.
That's the thing. I love, like, okay, I think right now we can all agree, like Gemini and OpenAI, and they're ahead, right? They're just a bit further down the road. They're a little bit more advanced than, let's say, Olama and Llama 3. But for a lot of use cases, Llama 3 is great. And you can just run it on your local machine, air-gapped, completely offline.
Yeah.
And it's super fast, and it does it's like ChatGPT 3.5, you know, imagine having that open source, you know.
Yeah.
And you said that you don't have to change your code. You're right about that. Sometimes like Olama doesn't support functions.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the main issue. Like I use it a lot, but when
Yeah.
it comes to functions, unfortunately, doesn't provide that through the standard API.
Right.
You can go beneath the API,
Yeah.
but that becomes too much.
Hopefully,
custom. But yeah,
hopefully it'll get. I mean, it's a changing space. Who knows? By the time you watch this video in the far-flung future of July, you know, whatever, like maybe it'll all be changed by then. It's changing all the time. But but basically, you're right. It doesn't. You don't need to change your code very often. And
yeah, but prompting might be very different, like based on the model. So
Yeah.
at least in the Spring code, we don't have to change anything, but it's nice because Spring AI allows to provide the prompts via resources. So
Right.
we don't have to hard code things in
multi-line strings. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we did. We actually put that in the DSL. Did you show the new chat client DSL today?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. What do you
This
think?
new,
What do you think of
it's amazing. It's amazing. So I was preparing this presentation, and of course, in the past few weeks, there have been so many great changes in the project. So I kept evolving the presentation and changing the code until yesterday, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And the code became better and better, and also
Less and less.
smaller and smaller.
Yes.
It's amazing.
A RAG
to
pipeline.
witness that experience, like getting better and better.
Yeah. And more.
In days.
So obviously the two people that work on it the most, Dr. Mark Pollack and Christian Zolaf, are they know the space of AI. They do, right? It's a big space, and they've seen every inch of it. They've opened every door. They've gone into every room. But what has happened? So even the very first versions of Spring AI, the earliest, it's not yet GA, by the way, friends. We're racing
Really
towards
close, yeah.
a 1.0. So if you have feedback, we want to hear about it now. But what I'm saying is, when we first announced this project back at Spring 1 last year, as you remember, we supported all of the possible, or most of the possible spaces in this giant, most of the possible cases in this giant space, right? But what has gotten so nice is that it's getting more and more concise, and it's getting more clear, and the API is now driving you towards that stuff, right? Just love it.
Yeah, it's very refined and really nice experience, also in very Spring Boot style.
Right, exactly. So good. And you're right. And an example of that, you mentioned the DSL. You can specify a resource, and now you get your string. Doesn't matter where the resource is from, a web service, your file system, the class path, whatever. It's just a Spring resource. You can specify a string too, and you can even inject the resource yourself and then call get content as string and pass in the car set. It's just like a one-liner, but now you don't even have to do that. It's just this very, very thoughtful, deliberate sort of, this should be as fast as humanly possible, And also the DSL has gotten cleaner. So you hit control space, type, you can only go a certain direction. There's no way to, you could do everything before that you can do now. Like what I mean before is like a month ago.
Yeah, and I had so much code, and now I just removed it because with the new chat client builder, and then I can define these advisors and get RAG out of the box.
The RAG
I don't
pipeline.
have to specify or the output master.
Yes.
I don't have to convert string to objects myself.
It just
now
goes away.
The framework takes care of everything. It's
so the feature, exactly. That's the right way. It wasn't that you couldn't do this stuff before. You could. It's not like it wasn't like you could not take the output and convert it into a customer or actor or whatever. And it wasn't like we didn't have support for RAG, and it wasn't like we didn't have support for using prompts, but it's just so streamlined. It's fast, and the IDE, you control space your way through it. Like
really fast, no boilerplate code anymore, just direct to the point on what you want to implement. Yeah.
Good. And does it feel kind of like a JDBC client or a REST client?
Yeah, REST client,
Yeah. Good. I'm so glad. Okay. I hope people will, because I'm a big fan, but take his word for it. He knows, he knows things. Just for good stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited. I when you do the next edition of the book, you should also include Spring AI.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be.
Yeah. So if the second edition happens, definitely Spring AI would be part of it.
It's a whole new world. I mean, crazy that when did your book come out?
November 2022.
So same time as OpenAI was first announced.
Yes.
Or ChatGPT,
Great timing. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and the world is like night and day different now.
Yes.
Just 2 years later. Wow.
Yeah, many things changed, but I really like that. Basically, changing just a couple of things, still everything in the book is relevant. I got a comment yesterday that, I'm running all the examples on Java 21 and Spring Boot 3, and everything is working fine, even if the book was, using still Spring Boot 2 and Java
8 maybe.
17 already.
Okay, yeah.
But still, it's great. So even going through a new major with Spring Boot, it's just really minor changes, and you can upgrade. That's a good experience as a Spring Boot developer.
Great experience, yeah. Sometimes we don't get it right, but we try. That's great. So what are you working on next? What's the thing that's like keeping? I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of the AI stuff. You're into that.
Yeah, right now that's maybe the main thing I'm looking into.
Oh yeah. You and me and everybody else.
Yeah, and I'm curious to also see how it evolves Spring AI. We were talking with Mark and Christian earlier, and see maybe what's coming next, observability in Spring AI, and some higher level abstractions perhaps.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to rename this conference Spring AIO. But then there's a Linux what's it, DLL, a Linux library in the kernel called AIO. It's a asynchronous IO. Yeah. Right? Or AIO. Yeah. And it makes your IO real fast. It's like a ePOL. Yeah. Or something like that, But
but something I like about Spring AI and in general building AI applications with Spring is all the support we already have for all the data integration.
Right.
And I'm sure all the details there with Spring integration, Spring Batch, and the Spring Cloud projects. Like we have everything available to build these ingestion pipelines and gather data from different sources. Like it's already there. Yep. So it's very easy to reuse the whole Spring portfolio for this new type of application.
Reuse that's the win, right?
Yeah.
Because you can, we've got this incredible tool that lets you carve away with AI, but then you're right, data engineering is part of AI engineering, and Spring's already very good there.
You don't have to learn a lot of new things or introduce so many new projects, because Spring already has a lot of solutions for that.
Yeah. And so I think because that's been, even in Spring AI, we have the vector store stuff, right? Which is vector stores you can use outside of AI technically, right? Mm-hmm. If you wanted to, you could have similarity searches. That's actually pretty useful. It's one of those libraries where all those vector store implementations, yes, it makes sense. It should be with Spring AI because right now that's the most common use case. But it's like that also could be part of a Spring data module. It's a data support. It's a type of database, and there's dozens of them now. And Spring AI has this incredible list of vector stores. You don't even have to use AI for that. It's useful by itself. I mean, that project is just there's so much ETL stuff.
That's true. That's one of the examples I showed today with the semantic search. You don't even need a language model. Right. You just need embeddings, a vector store, and you can do semantic search.
And then
that's powerful.
I couldn't agree more. And then there's also the if you want to get data from a PDF or from a JSON file or whatever, there's a document reader hierarchy. Yeah. And so that's it's so easy to focus on this top level stuff, but people forget Spring AI has they're trying to support. If you drew it as a circle, you've got your model, your vector store, your embedding client. You've got your model client, your embedding client. Yeah. When I say model, I mean chat or image, right? Client. You've got your vector store. You've got your embedding client. These are the three. I don't know the key interfaces, but there's also this little stuff around the edges, like how do I get data in and out, right? Yeah. Document readers and ETL and that kind of stuff. And it's, you're right. Yeah. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and for existing applications, you don't even necessarily need to introduce new components for databases. Right. Like with Postgres, you have PG vector extension, and
it's so good.
And suddenly you have also vector store available. Right. You don't need additional services.
And I think that also means you can do things in the same transaction, right? Like if I write a record to a Postgres table and then write to the PG vector, I mean, behind the scenes, it's using JDBC client, right?
Yeah, it's using the JDBC client.
So why couldn't it be in the same transaction?
Yeah,
it's just good.
And also potential for some Spring Data repository access, because it's using the same underlying infrastructure in Spring. So,
and by the way, so Dr. Pollock, as you probably know, Dr. Mark Pollock is, well, first of all, he was the founder of Spring.net. Nobody remembers this, but it was a great project. It works for, .net, C#, that kind of thing. But also, he was the first lead of Spring Data, right? And then he was the lead of Spring Cloud Dataflow, right? And so Dataflow is all about stream processing and data processing. And Spring Data is the technology that everybody uses and everybody else copies to do data access on the JVM today, right? And he was the person who created the first versions of those, right? He knows about data. Trust me, he's been resisting very much to add all this extra support to Spring AI because he's already built all of it over here. He's like, wait, let's just make it easy to work with everything. Such a good project. I'm so excited. Yeah. Talking to you has made me want to write more Spring AI code. Okay. Well, anyway, so where can people find you? Are you a consultant? Do you work for a company? What do you do? Why?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media, on Twitter and LinkedIn mainly. I'm mainly on those two social media.
Okay. Okay. And
I'm based in Denmark. So if you ever come around Denmark and you like to chat about Spring, let me know.
Denmark's awesome. What's the Twitter handle or the?
It's at Vitale Thomas.
So VITALE THOMAS.
Yes.
Okay. Nice. Cool. All right. Thanks, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Stay tuned.